The following names of people in this video have been altered to protect the privacy and identity of their respective nature. I played a lot of Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64 and Super Smash Bros. Melee on GameCube in high school, and I remember just being blazed as hell, kicking people's buttocks, and of course, sometimes they'd get a dub on me here and there. Unfortunately, I had to adult and go to school, so the passion died, but without further ado, let's get started on the history of Super Smash Bros. Super Smash Bros. First released in 1999 in Japan, the United States, and Europe for the Nintendo 64. China got the later release in 2005 for the IQ player, which is just another term for Nintendo 64. The main key difference is that the IQ player translates the games to Chinese. I couldn't find anything on why China got the later release, so sorry about that. Super Smash Bros. 64 made its way to the Wii in January of 2009 in Japan, a day before its 10-year anniversary, and later that year in Europe and North America. The game unfortunately became unavailable for the Wii as of January 2019. Sorry to give your hopes up. When the game was coming to fruition as an idea, Michael wanted a fighting game that was fun but didn't require a lot of skill. This idea came when he was playing at an arcade and kept winning in a game called King of Fighters 95, realizing his opponent was a novice at the game. His first design of the game was called Dragon King: The Fighting Game, which has straightforward characters. Realizing fighting games weren't selling well, he had to make it original. After presenting the game to HAL Laboratory, a coworker suggested he add Nintendo characters to appease to an audience that already exists. With thought and consideration, Michael decided to add the Nintendo characters instead of the original characters, giving players more familiarity. He didn't receive permission to add these characters, but made sure they were well balanced before presenting them. The prototype had Mario, Donkey Kong, Samus, Aaron, and Fox as characters you could play, and were later approved. Third-party sources have said Namco's 1995 game, The Outfoxies, could be feasible inspiration. Michael being employed by HAL Laboratory were the primary developers. With only 2 developers, HAL Laboratory hired more employees to help Michael and his co-worker. They were going to add Marth, King Dedede, Bowser, and Mewtwo to the game, but decided against it for multiple reasons. For music, they used the same composer for Super Smash Bros. 64 and Melee. The marketing team was very unsure about the impression the public would have on Nintendo characters beating each other up. Even fighting game players were unsure about the game labeling itself as a fighting game. Despite the downplay, the team needed to hype the game up. Nintendo of America made an event called Super Smash Bros. Slam Fest 99 at the MGM Grand Adventures theme park in Las Vegas, Nevada in April 1999. The event had dressed-up characters from the game performing scripted wrestling. The matches were about 17 minutes long, and there were stations for people to play the game as well. Because of the Columbine shooting on April 20th, 1999, there was caution for the event and also controversy on the debate on if games cause violence. The game was simple. You had 12 fighters, which of 4 you had to unlock, and some of which were Pokemon you could choose from. The ones you start out with, however, are Mario, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, Kirby, Fox, and Pikachu. Spoiler, the ones you can unlock are Luigi, Jigglypuff, Captain Falcon, and Ness. Ness will mess you up with that baseball bat. With their respective abilities and playstyles, it makes for an interesting combination of what you'll go up against with their simplistic yet powerful abilities, which makes the game fun, and I'm not just talking about Super Smash Bros. 64, I mean as a generality of the series. The game includes 9 maps, or I think the community calls them stages, all in which are relative to a character's universe. Some have more than others, and some characters don't even get a featured map, or I mean stage, but for the most part they do. For example, Mario gets 2, and that's Peach's Castle and a stage you have to unlock. There weren't many tournaments for Smash Bros. 64, there were probably some underground tournaments at your local game store, but I'm just guessing. People didn't start looking at Super Smash Bros. Competitive play until Super Smash Bros. Melee became popularized a few years later after its release. The scene was small in 2000 with the founding of Smash World forums now called Smashboards. Japanese tournaments at the time had a sponsored tournament by Nintendo, and the event was called Smash Bros. Fighting Battle Smash Bros. Meijin Deciding Game, and it was at the Space World 1999. With about 10,000 contestants, obviously dwindling down in number based on the matches, Japan had featured some high-level players in the tournament. Then there was Japan United Smash Festa Round Robin 1. In 2001, it was one of the most notable tournaments for its era. Unlike other tournaments being held one day, this tournament was held for 3 days and had items on. With its success, Round Robin 2 featured Melee instead and would go on until 2005. Unofficial tournaments started using emulators like Project 64. They would set up the competitions using Emulation 64 and use GameFAQs as well. All in all, Super Smash Bros. 64 was a success, being the 5th best-selling game for the Nintendo 64. Published by Nintendo and made by HAL Laboratory for the GameCube, Super Smash Bros. Melee came out in 2001 in Japan and the United States. In 2002, Europe and Australia got their release of the game. It's the second game to the Super Smash Bros. 64 and has the Mario, Legend of Zelda, Star Fox, and Pokemon universes, adding a more diverse range of characters and stages to choose from, and yes, it includes your favorites from the first game. The game received widespread positive feedback from critics, earning praise for its graphics, simplistic controls, gameplay, and soundtrack. Some could argue it's one of the greatest games ever made, having over 7 million copies sold by 2008, becoming one of the GameCube's greatest selling titles. HAL Laboratory also developed Super Smash Bros. Melee with Michael as head of production and the creator of Mario, Dwight, being the co-producer. The game was one of the first to be released on GameCube. The game was in development for 13 months beginning autumn of 2000, and Michael wanted to make close attention to the physics and detail of the game. Michael points out in an interview in 2010 calling Melee the sharpest game in the series, even compared to Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Michael and the developers had reasons why some characters were added and some not on the game's official Japanese website, which I couldn't find. Michael had requests to add Sonic the Hedgehog, Solid Snake, and even to get rid of Ness in place of Lucas, which yes, Lucas is in the Earthbound universe. Most of these characters weren't added because the game was too far in development for the characters to be added. With more development time, these characters were added into Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Marth and Roy were exclusively going to be for the Japanese version of the game, but they received attention from the Western culture, so they were added to the game as well. Nintendo presented the game at E3 of 2001 as a demo you could play. The next major event was at Space World in 2001 that had an updated demo. The music for this game was not directly from the game, but rather taken from live orchestral arrangements performed by the New Japan Philharmonic. You actually get to unlock some of the tracks after achieving some in-game accomplishments. One of the features that makes this game different from other fighting games is that it has percentages for health that increase with damage, causing more knockback to your character, with the intention of your goal being to knock your opponent off the stage. In other words, the higher the percent your health is, the farther you'll be knocked back, thus the closer to being knocked off the stage you are, and the closer you are to losing a life, or what the community calls stocks. A being a regular attack and B being a special attack is a different type of attack your character does, bringing you one step closer to collateral damage on your enemies. During battles, items would fall onto the battlefield related to Nintendo items. Some items would do harm and some would heal the harm done. Some items are ranged and others are close quarters. Like the previous game, stages are universes based on the characters. Some stages have hazards like Samus's map, and while playing, you are in a two-dimensional plane in a 3D world, meaning you can only move left and right, up and down, but the maps have depth. This game features a single-player mode which has multiple modes: classic mode, home run contest, target test, and adventure mode. Multiplayer could have up to 4 players either in teams or free-for-all. The AI are ranked 1 through 9, 9 being the most difficult. Individual players can be handicapped as well. The game modes include time mode, stock mode, and coin mode, with each mode having different objectives. Super Smash Bros. Melee offers 25 fighters, but if you want to count one of the transforming characters, 26. That's 13 more fighters than its predecessor, or 14. Every character is of Nintendo's property. There are tournaments dating back to 2002 from the release of Super Smash Bros. Melee. Many contemplate it to be the most competitive game in the series. Based in California back in 2002, the tournament was called Tournament Go. There are many debates and arguments, so the host decided to get rid of most of the items and only have a few select stages to pick from, trying to mitigate the issues in the competitive scene. Between 2003 and 2007 is considered the golden age of Melee, having MLG Gaming taking them under their wing. There are about 8 Kings of Smash, and I'm leaving it up to you to research who they are at your leisure. Like many great things, they must fall, and the fall or the decline of Super Smash Bros. Melee was between 2008 and 2013, especially with the new game Brawl coming out. 2013 rolled around, and after the game won a charity drive, EVO featured the game in its lineup. Because of a large turnout and viewership that year, EVO continued the game for another 5 years. EVO wasn't the only hope to popularize the game. A documentary called The Smash Brothers, which came out in 2013, helped revitalize the game, creating the Platinum Age, or the era of the 5 gods, as reference to the top 5 players. 6 if you want to include the Gods later. They were referred to as the Big Six. Unfortunately, the Big Six went their separate paths in 2018 and stopped competing. The year 2020 came about and the competitive scene became affected by COVID-19, shutting down all in-person tournaments. However, in light of this, a fan-made modification of Melee was made, creating low-latency games, which means better connections for the game. Nintendo became concerned with this project, and I don't know if I'm butchering this, called Project Slippy, and gave a cease and desist notice, causing uproar in the community. People were even tweeting #FreeMelee on Twitter. The game was one of the fastest selling in Japan, having about 360,000 units sold in the week ending November 2001. The game sold over 1 million copies in only 2 months, making it GameCube's first to have a game reach 1 million. The game didn't sell as well in America, selling 250,000 copies in 9 days. By July 2006, the game sold about 3 million copies and earned $125 million in the United States. Super Smash Bros. Melee was the 19th best-selling video game in 2001. Next Generation, a video game magazine, ranked the game as the 5th highest-selling game released for the PS2, Xbox, and/or GameCube between 2000 and 2006 in the country as what I assume to be America. In March 2008, Super Smash Bros. Melee was the best-selling GameCube game with over 7 million copies sold worldwide. Legend has it that at one point, 70% of GameCube owners owned Super Smash Bros. Melee. The game had received praise from GameSpy, IGN, GameSpot, giving it titles like Console Fighting Game of the Year or nominations for Best Music and Fighting Game. Out of a poll of 100 best games, GameFAQs placed the game 6th in a poll and was in the final 4 for the Best Game Ever contest. Super Smash Bros. Brawl, third to come out in the series, came out in 2008 in Japan, North America, Australia, and Europe, and development started in 2005. This game has a different developer, Sora Ltd, and once again published by Nintendo. The number of combatants has increased from Melee, having 39 characters, 29 which you can play from the start. I will say some combatants have been cut from Brawl, as in some characters didn't make it from Super Smash Bros. Melee, being Dr. Mario, Roy, Young Link, Mewtwo, and Pichu. Super Smash Bros. Brawl had a competitive scene right away compared to Melee. Can I call it that for short? Anyway, there's an active community following the release of Brawl. The main places for Brawl tournaments were at Florida, Southern California, Texas, Maryland, Virginia, and the tri-state area. With Brawl being the new best thing, the Melee community geared its attention to Brawl for most of 2008. There was some conflict from the previous community because they didn't like some things Brawl introduced, like random tripping. The game also seemed floatier and slower, if that makes sense. Because of this, it seemed to lack competitive depth. Veteran players also left, and the scene consisted mainly of new players, it seemed. 2010 came around, and MLG, or Major League Gaming, swooped Brawl up for its 2010 Pro Circuit. However, Nintendo didn't allow any live streams of it. The winner won $12,500. After the MLG era, the group Clash tournaments allowed for streaming footage of Brawl. In 2014, Brawl had become the unpopular kid at the lunch table, while Melee had success at EVO 2013. Created by Bandai Namco and Sora Ltd, Super Smash Bros. 4, someone stated in an interview that they consider the 3DS version the 4th installment and the 5th installment on the Wii U. You could say the game features the same gameplay, but with some differences. The 3DS version is the first version of the Super Smash Bros. To be on a handheld device. Both games have received positive reviews and got some compliments on the fine-tuning of the game. The 3DS version sold over 9 million copies worldwide as of 2022, whereas the Wii U version sold over 5 million copies as of 2020. Both games feature 58 characters, overall 34 of which come from Brawl, and the return of Dr. Mario, Mewtwo, and Roy from Melee. 5 did not return from Brawl, and they are Star Fox's Wolf, Squirtle, and Ivysaur, alongside the trainer, as well as Ice Climbers and Snake. Snake would return through DLC. Young Link and Pichu did not return from Melee. My boy Mr. Game & Watch has survived the purge, though. Smash 4 is, yes, we're calling it Smash 4, is the first Smash game to have balanced patches via online download, which had a good impact on tournament play. This also shifted the meta play for the characters. The 3DS version isn't really played competitively, but rather the Wii U for better optimization of the screen. I won't really be going over the competitive play in Smash 4 because it factored around the people rather than the game and events itself. There will be a link in the description going over more competitive play of Smash 4 down below. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, often referred to as SSBU or Ultimate, I think I'm just going to call it Ultimate. Ultimate is the 6th installment of its series if you count the 3DS and the Wii U as separate installments. Ultimate received praise from critics and the players' fanbase, with the release of the game being December of 2018. Some call it the best in the series so far, with its fine-tuning of pre-existing gameplay elements and having about 30 million copies sold, additionally making it the best-selling Smash game. For example, it beat Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Street Fighter 2 in sales. Ultimate also won Best Fighting Game at the Game Awards 2019. With 86 fighters in total, they brought back many more from previous games and 24 new characters as well. There are many fighters in this game to choose from. 65 are from previous games with what looks like to be primarily melee characters. There are some DLC characters, so be wary of that. There's about 12 as DLC. The game has 18 new stages with 96 returning stages. That's a lot of stages in my opinion. That's about all I have to say about the stages, so yeah. Michael had become inspired to work on the next Smash game after Jim's death. It was also Jim's request before he passed away, and in this aspect, Jim was the 4th president and CEO of Nintendo at the time. Unlike previous Smash titles which had development studios built from scratch, Bandai Namco stepped in to help with game development and decided to work based off the last game rather than overhaul the game completely. This would also mean more characters to play, as Michael decided to increase the game speed overall, but not so much it takes away from the other games. Michael also notes he wants to make the speed change in previous titles, but did it because it was too easy to lose track of your character. There are many decisions for what fighters were going to be in the game. For example, Alucard from Castlevania was going to be in the game, but was replaced with Simon and Richard to appease fans more. The game was live streamed at E3 2018, rest in peace E3, with Michael directing the presentation. The presentation included every character from the Super Smash Bros. Series. The presentation ended with the reveal of Ridley from the Metroid series. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find anything on the tournaments or the competitive scene of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but I'm sure it exists through esports somewhere. Anyway, that's all I have for the history of Super Smash Bros. Thank you for tuning in.